All right, folks, we began this conversation by taking you to the front lines of the border crisis, talking to a sheriff, talking to a senator in Congress, trying to make a difference. We're going to pivot now to the policy solutions that are sitting right in front of this country to make this a situation that we can resolve. Joining us right now is Ryan Walker, the acting executive director of Heritage Action for America, our sponsor for tonight. Ryan, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
We've had a very powerful walkthrough of just how bad the situation is at the border and how much it has penetrated every community in America, no matter how close or far you live from the border. But now the question pivots to what can everyday Americans do to begin to exert the sort of pressure that will lead to long-term resolutions? Big victories in the House. It seems like the new battleground's the Senate, right?
That's right. So we have H.R. 2 that has passed the House, as I'm sure the viewers have heard. It now moves over to the Senate. And in fact, we had some recent activity on this. Senator Marshall offered H.R. 2 as an amendment on a bill that recently was considered by the Senate. And miraculously, we had a number of individuals that were surprises in supporting that. So the movement and action really does center around the Senate, getting H.R. 2 reintroduced on the Senate side, and ultimately getting it considered.
Yeah. And, you know, what's interesting is that it was a magnanimous moment when the House passed it, because there's been previous attempts to get this sort of immigration reform through Congress. For many years, they always ended up in failure. And now with a very small majority, Kevin McCarthy gets these sort of reforms through. What was the key to getting the House to do what it did?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to the grassroots. So since 2018, Congress and especially the House of Representatives have been trying to pass border security legislation, or at least legislation in name only that addressed border security. The efforts in 2018 and since then have failed until now. And I think Heritage Action believes that that's because of the action and energy of the grassroots. They have spent the past 2 or 3 election cycles taking a serious look at where candidates and elected representatives are on the issue of border security, and simply demanding that they respond to voters' wishes and that they address this issue that is affecting them on a daily basis. Crime, fentanyl, you've mentioned some of these pain points of border security and the open borders policy of the Biden administration. Finally, grassroots individuals and voters have woken up to this reality and are demanding that their elected representatives adhere to and pass strong border security legislation, which again, for the first time in decades, we have seen this year. And I think it's truly because of that energy around the election cycles and getting conservatives or even Republicans who believe in border security into office.
Yeah, we've seen the energy that Heritage Action for America has created, whether it's on election integrity, parents' rights, now border security. It is an amazing thing, but when constituents get activated and they start talking to their policymakers, their lawmakers, their elected leaders, action really happens. Things that have been long in a ditch can suddenly pop out onto the road and get to the finish line. What are some of the tactics and tools that Heritage Action has made available to everyday Americans that are empowering them to have those conversations and have that sort of impact on public policy?
Yeah, that's a great question, John, and a great expose of what Heritage Action does on a daily basis and tries to provide to grassroots voters. And so that includes a breakdown of the problem at hand. We educate the grassroots and voters across America on the issues, especially something like border security, how it is impacting their local community, whether it be fentanyl or crime statistics, you name it, we're providing that information to them. We then take that information and develop policy solutions through our colleagues at the Heritage Foundation. We send around those suggestions to both lawmakers and voters and ask them to engage with their elected officials to ask that these policies be included in whatever piece of legislation is voted on to deal with the issue. We then take those grassroots individuals, those voters, and go alongside them. We provide them with recommended talking points when they're calling their office. We inform them on how and when best to contact their office. We give them call scripts, email drafts to send to their elected representatives, and we put them directly into contact with those individuals. We hold events in the states with those elected members, both for educational purposes and so that they have a direct connection to their elected representative. And so we regularly encourage that activity from the members at Heritage Action and provide them with all of the resources that they need to go and effectively lobby their representative on the policies that they want to see implemented.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing, but facts are very stubborn in these policy debates. If you can get the facts in front of people, all of a sudden lawmakers are paying attention. I think there's been some extraordinary numbers. Nearly 4 million illegal aliens entered into the country since Joe Biden became president. There was a new number just in the last few days put out by Border Patrol of 460 people with terrorist ties that have tried to come through either the southern or northern border. Thousands of Chinese aliens coming into the country in numbers we've never seen before. By the way, you can't leave China without an exit visa, so that means the government's pushing them in this direction. It seems like these statistics are beginning to create a pressure on Democrats who have long resisted border security reform. Tell us the dynamic with Democrats right now. They have a lot of seats to defend in 2024 that are tough Senate seats. Are they softening up a little bit on Border Patrol given the extraordinary amount of information Hoffa has been able to put into the public debate?
I think that they are. We've seen a lot of movement on this, especially you mentioned the vulnerable Senate seats. So folks like John Tester and Joe Manchin, Jackie Rosen in Nevada, these senators are up for re-election. And they have seen for the first time voters in their states see the impact and be able to communicate and talk about it in a coherent and frequent manner so that those issues are continually highlighted. And I'll say this, John, the impacts of an open border are no longer at the border. They are no longer contained to Texas or Arizona or New Mexico. They are spread across the country now. Those individuals are going into the interior. They are being transported and put in places like Nevada, like Montana, like West Virginia. And they are seeing for the first time what those impacts are in their states. They're seeing what having those illegal migrants in their communities means. They get to see the cost. They get to see the human capital toll on both the migrants themselves and their communities. So yes, the Senate is waking up to that. I saw an interesting statistic this morning. Something like 95% of Republicans in a recent survey agree that border security is one of the top issues and are demanding congressional action. And stunningly, something like 80% of independents are also aware of this issue and believe that it is one of the top issues that should be addressed by Congress. So this is no longer a Republican or conservative message. This is an American message that our communities need to be safer. They need to be more secure, that they need to have the ability to control who comes in and goes out of their communities and what kinds of activities those individuals are partaking in. And so this is again a message that is seeping into the American psyche and something that's continually raised with their elected representatives.
Ryan, we got about a minute left. It has, and no doubt it has seeped into the consciousness in ways I haven't seen in many, many years in Washington. We talked about the toolkit for helping everyday voters to push the Senate to get the legislation passed. There's another initiative that Heritage Action has been working on, the impeachment of our Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. Tell us if people, first tell us why Mayorkas doesn't deserve to have the job in your mind, and then two, what they can do through Hoffa to get that process of impeachment going.
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, in our view, this is a dereliction of duty. It is incumbent on the executive branch to faithfully execute the laws according to the Constitution. And what Mayorkas and President Biden are doing at the southern border is simply ignoring those laws and refusing to faithfully execute, which is a primary component of the oath that they take when they are sworn into the office that they hold. So it's our view that Congress needs to continue the investigations into the deliberate actions of Secretary Mayorkas and the Biden administration and hold him to account. Part of that process is already kicking off in the Committee on Homeland Security, and we urge members to continue that work. Visit our website, heritageaction.com. We have a toolkit that informs any individual seeking more information on Mayorkas and his dereliction of duty and how they can get involved to urge their members, especially in the House, to go about this process and impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security.
These are big issues in a very historic time in this country's great history. Ryan, what a great honor to first partner with Hoffa tonight on this special, to have this very important conversation, also to learn about all the things that you're doing to make Americans empowered to make a change on the border security issue. Great to have you on the show today.
Thanks, John.
All right, folks, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to wrap up with our last guest. She has more than 25 years of experience in the immigration and homeland security sector of government. We'll be right back right after these commercial messages.